Welcome into another edition of Tampa 2. Casey Phillips here with staff writer Brianna Dix. We have a less than fun game to talk about, but a huge game to preview.
Yes.
This is,
that we do.
as Tristan Wirth said, for all the marbles. I love that,
Yep.
for all the marbles. I think I said that to someone this week and then realized, I don't know that anyone knows what that even means anymore or refers to. But then Tristan said it, so it gave me hope that I wasn't as old as I thought I was talking about that. But yeah, this last game, man, I know what a disappointment it was in terms of, I know the team didn't expect to play like that. I know that it's not what they know they're capable of, the stakes of what it would have meant. Thankfully, we are in a position to still have all the same outcomes in terms of the playoffs. It did not affect where you would be in the playoffs, who you would play, home field, all of that stuff. So it is a fortunate position to be in that this next week you can accomplish everything you would have accomplished last week. I'm sure they would have liked to have done it in this last game, but it is great to know you're still in the same boat. What are the big takeaways for you from this last game against the Saints?
For me, it was just one of those games where nothing went right. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The Saints dominated the line of scrimmage, both sides of the ball. I mean, offensively, just kind of couldn't get into a groove, and then anytime they would, you would have a penalty, you would have a turnover. Through the first three quarters, they crossed the midfield point twice, and both of those drives resulted in turnovers, which they had a season high of 4. And they didn't score until their 10th possession. They had 4 3-and-outs in the first half. Weren't able to get the run game going, and just a lot of the strides that you had seen this team make in recent weeks, that was just kind of a fluke game. And then, defensively didn't even register a hit on Derek Carr. The Saints just really exploited kind of that underneath area of the field in the soft zones with the tight ends. Juwan Johnson just had an unbelievable game. I think he finished with, 8 catches for 90 yards? Just day that he had. So I'm excited to see how this team is able to bounce back against the Panthers this week when it's all on the line, win or go home. Yeah,
I agree. And I think the team had shown so much capability of coming out of adversity when you'd lost that 6 of 7. To go from that to a 4-game win streak tells me this team has already done what it needs to do this week, right? They've already recovered from a difficult time to have the bounce back, to have that belief, to not cave, to not give up. So I feel like that's really encouraging to me to know that already this season we've seen them do that. But yeah, it's going to have to be an immediate, quick turnaround. And in some ways, I think that's the best way to recover from a tough game is to go into the next one where it is absolutely do or die, that there's no choice. That can be such a shock to the system of a tough loss going into that being exactly what you need for this next weekend. But yeah, I think that it was so interesting to watch how we felt like this offense had found its identity, had turned the corner. And then this game, it's the first time you're shut out in the first half. Still no touchdown on the opening drive, which is our little counter every week at this point. And I just think that it was so interesting to watch that. And sometimes that is how it is with division opponents that know you really well, that division games are just always so weird that way. If you got rivalries, you got all this stuff. And so I don't know what it's going to mean if I think and hope this was, like you put it, a fluke, where these last 4 games before that were the things showing that this is who we are, this is our identity and what we're capable of. This was just a weird moment in time, and I think we'll see.
It's not the Bucs day,
right? And also, knowing that how out of character it was in a lot of ways in terms of, like you said, the turnovers specifically. So it was Baker's first multi-interception game this season, and it was the first interception he'd had in 4 weeks. He'd thrown 115 consecutive passes without an interception. So obviously this was a fluke in terms of the not being able to take care of the ball as well. That is something that the team had done really well leading up to this. And going into the game, they were tied for the best turnover margin at plus 10 in the league. So then committing 4 turnovers in the game without forcing it, obviously that is very different from the numbers they had gotten to this point. And we know that, especially with the Saints, but in general, the turnover battle is going to be the biggest indicator of whether you win or lose. And the good news is the Bucs had been doing really well with that. They've proven and shown they know how to take care of the ball. I do think that there was a chance this was just a bit of a fluky game. On a couple of good notes, I did love to see that Chris Godwin tied Jimmy Giles and passed Cam Brate for the second most touchdown receptions in team history. So Just, again, acknowledging how wonderful it's been to get a chance to watch Mike Evans and Chris Godwin do what they've done, and that every game this year, one of them, or both of them, is hitting some milestone. I just think it's really cool to stop and like take a moment to say how cool it is that we're getting to witness that and watch that. And then as much as I know the run game itself wasn't going great this game overall, I do feel like in recent weeks I'm encouraged by the fact that Chase Edmonds seems to be running pretty well. That it's been a lot on Rashad's shoulders this year to have, Chase missed some time with injury. And now, as we've talked about, just getting the whole offense to click a little bit more and the chemistry there, that I'm sure he missed a lot of that opportunity. Right. And now that he's been able to get in some, give Rashad a breather and not
kind of
feel
that
like
change of pace guy.
Yeah, and to feel like you're not just losing out on things by having Rashad take a break for a drive or two.
Yeah.
That you're still going to get some production there, I think is really great to see that Chase has come on a little bit more. And defensively, I just felt like we weren't able to get off the field, especially early. I think the Saints started 6 of 8 on third down. That's pretty brutal. A, it's going to wear your defense out. And B, it's just kind of demoralizing, right? You know, that when you let them have these longer drives or you let them convert on third down, like that's just kind of tough to come back from. So getting off the field early, and you mentioned the coverage of the tight ends, that's usually an area of strength with this team, especially because we know how great Levante David is in that kind of coverage and how often they're kind of his assignment. And it just, for whatever reason, again, it just felt like somehow collectively it just wasn't the Bucs' day. In a lot of the areas that they're normally really good in. And, even looking at how Jake Camarda wasn't his best game, wasn't Antoine Winfield's best game, and you're talking about some of the most consistent people for the whole team. And that's when it tells you it just was off.
It wasn't happening.
It was just off. It was just an off day. I did love to see Yaya Diaby getting more tackles for loss. Automatic. So now he and Kalijah are first and second among all rookies in tackles for loss. And it means as a team that the Bucs lead the NFL in tackles for loss by rookies and second in sacks by a rookie. That's a big deal, and especially when you think about the fact that so many pass rushers were drafted ahead of them. The production you're getting
out of both of
them and based on their draft pick status and all of that, and the fact that, Yaya wasn't getting as many reps earlier on. Kalijah missed time to an injury. It's amazing, and I think it's just such a great sign about the future of this defense. Those two guys, and I think that, they're buddies, they're close, they help each other. You'll see them working on moves on the sideline. Like, I just feel like that's such a cool tandem between the two of them and what that could look like moving forward. So, also I figured we should talk about the Pro Bowl news that Mike Evans going to his 5th Pro Bowl, so deserved. And unfortunately, that is it in terms of the first team, or however you want to put it, the main roster, non-alternate roles. There are Bucs on the alternates, guys like Antoine Winfield Jr. that I know every Bucs fan would be like, what are we doing? A
little heated, outraged.
Everyone's a little upset about it. Yeah, and Scott and I did a whole rant about it on Insider the other day, so if you haven't seen that, it was pretty funny. Scott got on a major soapbox. There was a lot of emotions.
Scott on a soapbox?
I know, shocking. So it was... it's very sad to see some of those guys like Antoine miss out, but very excited for Mike Evans, so deserving, which is really great. And then, I figured we'd go into our injury updates. What have we learned so far? Again, recording on Friday morning, our disclaimer.
The positive of this week, so both Baker Mayfield, who's dealing with that ribs injury, and Tristan Wirfs both upgraded to limited participation on Thursday. And I think one of the big things with Baker this week is just going to be, as he's kind of said, the pain tolerance of dealing with the soreness. There wasn't any broken, there wasn't a fracture or anything serious. It's just progressing through that pain. And then yesterday, kind of worked with some of the third down stuff. Todd Bowles said he was functional in throws. So with this being the caliber of game it is, the high stakes divisional matchup to win the NFC South, for the Bucs to have their 3rd straight division title, Baker Mayfield is going to do everything in his power to be on that field on Sunday in Carolina.
You know it.
Yeah. 1,000%.
It's going to be interesting to watch for sure. So let's dive into our one-on-ones. What was for you the one that stood out of your one-on-one matchups you're excited about?
So I am going to go with Bryce Young going up against Antoine Winfield Jr. and then Luke Gedeke against Brian Burns. But I mean, one of the things with, Bryce Young, he's kind of had the ups and downs that you would expect from a rookie, but obviously just has the tantalizing traits that made him first overall pick in the draft. And if he gets, the time in the pocket, he has the compact release, he has the improvisation skills to extend plays using his legs, kind of is able to exploit the voids that he sees in coverage. So how they're able to kind of get pressure, get in his face, harass him in the pocket. And then Antoine Winfield, just what a remarkable season he's had. And I think what's so impressive is all of the things that the Bucs ask him to do and all the things that they put on his plate, but he does it all at a high level, whether it's blitzing, whether it's dropping back in coverage, whether it's disrupting the run in the box, whether it's manning the post and using his awareness and his range to get plays over the top or whatever the case may be. I mean, he just plays like his hair is on fire and is all over the field. And Scott and I just laugh up in the press box during games because it just seems like, dang near every defensive series, it's Antoine Winfield, just his name is being called out over and over and over. But I think he'll play a really big role on Sunday in kind of getting, whether it's coming on a blitz or whether it's his effectiveness and his angles, his pursuit leverage to the ball. If Bryce Young breaks out on a run, Antoine could play a key role in kind of shutting that down. And then for the offensive line, for Luke Gedeke going up against Brian Burns, Burns is he isn't quite as good against the run, but he's one of those players that very few people in the NFL can bend like he does with his flexibility around the edge. I feel like he's a guy that could just straight up dip underneath some tiny table in like a furniture store. It's just insane. He's almost like this generation's version of a Robert Quinn, of a Randy Gregory, just that ability that he has, his closing burst, and he just really sets the tone for them. So for a guy and they did really well going up against Brian Burns the last time these two teams played, not letting him wreak havoc like he has the capability of doing. And he's earned the nickname Spider-Man, just his ability to basically transport from like one place to the next. And then Luke Gedeke is just a guy that, has the athleticism for move blocking duties, his quickness, the technicians and the technique that he has. So I'm interested to see how that plays out on Sunday.
I like that. So my one-on-one, I had Rashad. I just feel like their defense is third against the pass, right? So they're pretty good at defending the pass, which I think means, man, you got to get Rashad going. Yeah. That's going to be so important for both just offensive success. If they're going to shut down the pass, you need the run.
Right.
But if you want a chance to pass, then you got to start with the run. And that's what Coach Canales has talked so much about is that when he talks about his commitment to the run, it is not just about running the ball. It's about then opening up the pass.
Yeah.
That it is about you need that to do anything else. And he said that regardless, and we saw it even in the Saints game where you're down a fair amount that kind of conventional wisdom might tell you, oh, you shouldn't be running the ball. He was like, no, we can't abandon all of it because then they're going to be able to just shut down the other thing. You've got to stay multidimensional no matter what. And I think that having Rashad get off to a quick, big start is going to be really important to try to open it up for other people. And he got a lot of work this last time we played them, but it was also a torrential downpour where both teams were just running the ball like crazy because you couldn't see it to do anything else. So it'll be interesting to see how both teams choose to use their run game in a non-traditional or in a non-torrential downpour. And then my other one would be was Vita versus either their interior or against Hubbard, depending on how you want to look at it. Because like we talked about that last game against them, Hubbard had over 100 yards against us, had a really big game. But I did look, it was so interesting. I looked at Hubbard's stats. The game against us, and again, I think this could be rain related, only game he did not have a target as a receiver either, that they did not throw him a single pass. Of the whole season, we are the only team that's the case for them not throwing to him.
Right.
Which shows and again, I think it could have been weather related, but the fact that they were like, all right, we're just going to run the heck out of him and right up the middle, and we're just going to try for this. So to see Vita get in there to be able to stop that, to know, again, so much of this is going to be about pressuring Bryce Young, and you're not going to be able to really get a lot of pressure if they're able to use their run game a ton. So I just feel like Vita stopping Hubbard, Rashad getting going, both of those things are just going to be so important. So position group, what about that?
I went with the line of scrimmage this week. I did our defensive line and our offensive line.
I like it.
But for the defensive line, so the Panthers rank 30th in sacks allowed per pass play, and Bryce Young has been dropped 59 times. So I kind of want to see how on Sunday the Bucs are able to kind of bounce back. And I think one of the things with the Saints is that the defensive line really wasn't able to get that pressure because they were dialing up that quick passing game. They used the play action, which they kind of hadn't done a lot over the season, but that kind of helped out their protections. It helped out the offensive line, took some of that pressure off when Derek Carr was kind of able to move around. And so I think that hindered a little bit of the pressure because he was getting the ball out before the Bucs were able to get there. But how they're able to get in Bryce Young's face and as a rookie kind of rattle him a little bit. And I think that's going to play a huge role in how this game goes and how it's dictated. And then, I mean, just offensive line redemption a little bit from last week. There were a lot of batted passes, a lot of pressure on Baker. So I think going up against a guy like Brian Burns, but also Derek Brown, is just an absolute beast. He has 13 quarterback hits. It commands at the point of attack and poses as well. And just kind of is their almost equivalent of, a Vita Vea type. And he routinely commands double teams, which kind of frees their linebackers to flow and make plays, but also for their pass rushers. So how the Bucs offensive line are able to hold up against those guys, I think is going to play a big role on Sunday.
I agree. So, I picked our outside linebackers as against their offensive line because, like you mentioned earlier, we got 0 quarterback hits on Derek Carr.
Yeah.
That's going to be hard to win with that.
Right.
I mean, if you're letting any quarterback in the NFL sit back there feeling
day
comfortable,
long,
they're going to be able to make the throws. I mean, it's when you're a quarterback in the NFL, I don't care who you are, I don't care where you got drafted, I don't care how much you're getting paid. If you're given time, you're going to make the throws. Yeah. And I think that it's a perfect sort of get right game on that because the Panthers have given up 62 sacks. Jeez. Oh my goodness. I feel real bad for Bryce Young. What a way to enter the league. He's been hit just a whole lot. And I think that
he's not feeling too swell on Mondays.
And this last game, I know he took a pretty big shot, so might be a little, a little wary, wary, to say the least. And, look, the Panthers know they are not advancing, and that's always an interesting position to be in. Teams can either just kind of pack it up early when they know that, or they can come out like swinging, that, hey, if we're going down, you're going down with us kind of mentality. And I can see where if you really get after him early or just are able to get a few sacks early, just make the day miserable for them, maybe you make them a little more inclined to make some business decisions.
Yeah.
Right? And so I think that by being aggressive like that, getting after him, getting some of those sacks, getting fired up, like that could be exactly what you need to just start. Start running away with things, start getting ahead. Because of course, in an ideal world for the Bucs, you get a big lead, and then you can start to rest some people.
Right.
That's the ideal. That's the beauty of knowing that it's just win or lose it. You don't have to worry about what's going on in other games.
Well, you build that momentum heading into the playoffs.
Right. And so I think that's a quick way to build that momentum, get ahead early. It's just a lot of pressure on him, get him down, get him uncomfortable. Maybe he throws a pick or two or fumbles, to get some of those turnovers, get those QB hits, the two things we did not have this last week that were so important. And then it's funny, we always talk about how for either our one-on-ones or our position groups, how rarely we pick quarterback. We tend to think of it as like its own thing.
Yeah.
But I chose this week to pick quarterback for my position group, especially not even just my one-on-one, because man, at this point, again, we're recording this Friday morning. We don't know exactly how Baker feels. That is he going to play? Is he not? And then if he plays, how healthy is he? How does he feel? And how much does that affect the way you're playing? Especially when it is something like ribs, the rotation.
When he's a guy that's going to take off, he's going to lower his shoulder.
Right. And then does he
not be as inclined to do
does he not do that? Is he able to still extend plays the way he is? You know, that so much of who he is could be affected by this.
Right.
So either his effectiveness, or if he just can't go, or if he can only go part way, and then you have to ask Kyle Trask to come in. What do things look like at that point of what's the score? You know, like this is really a game where it could truly be your quarterback position group having to contribute. That of course we all hope and think that Baker he is so tough. He is so, you know, like you put it earlier, he's going to do every dang thing in his power to be out there, start to finish, playing at his highest level. But of course, none of us know exactly what that is going to look like, feel like, or what could happen in the game. So I just think that so much of this game can come down to that position group of, is he available? What percent is he at? How does this affect his throwing rotation? You know, are you still getting your full, like, feet planted, full rotation, or are you kind of shortening your throwing motion a bit where then that makes the ball sail on you, or that, you know, it just, there's so many tiny little details of it, the mechanics of it that could be thrown off by an injury, or like you said, his desire or ability to extend the plays, to run, to put his head down, some of those things that we know has really been a key to this offense. So I think that's going to be really big. All right, so keys to the game, what are they in your mind?
I think one of the biggest things that has kind of been echoed throughout the building this week from players, coaches, is the attention to detail and being disciplined. And I loved Dave Canales said this week, he quoted Richard Sherman, but he said, the bigger the moment, the smaller the focus. And I love that because that's the mentality that this team has to have this week going up against the Panthers. I mean, just whether it's finishing tackles, whether it's getting off blocks, whether it's taking the correct angles, getting that leverage, all of these little things that pile up and end up having a really, really big impact. And getting back to those fundamentals, I think, is going to be crucial in this game. And yes, and proving that last week's game against the Saints was an anomaly, and that isn't going to be a trend that starts to continue. So how they're kind of able to tighten things up for this game, because yes, the margin of error is 0. You win this game, you're in the playoffs. You lose, you go home. This is it. So this is the time to get it right, build that momentum into the playoffs, and that's going to come down to, yes, the details every single play.
I agree. I think for me it would be starting fast. It's something we've seen the offense struggle with a little bit in general, but also just the idea of, again, when this game means so much to us and not as much to the Panthers in terms of nothing is changing for them. They're going home either way after this game. If you start giving them that glimmer of hope that they can play spoiler, you know, that you can start giving them that nothing to lose mentality, and then you all of a sudden kind of start putting some doubt of, oh man, like the Bucs starting to play tight maybe, or we got to win this. You don't want to play tight. And I think that if it's still 0-0, or maybe they take a lead and you're getting to the end of the first quarter and you start going, oh man, like what's happening? I just think that to start fast is going to be so important for just the coming out of that Saints game, the mentality to say like, we got this, we got this. And yeah, I think just protecting the ball, the turnover ratio we've seen, it's just such a massive indicator of the result of the game. And you either need to turn it over from them a lot or protect it and not turn it over at all. That you got to win that turnover battle, I think. All right, so let's talk about our quote of the week. What do you have?
Yes. So we talked about the old Pro Bowl situation.
Did you choose Casey
yes,
Rogers?
I did.
Of course we picked the same quote.
I had to go with the quote from
we really should start talking about this.
And defensive line coach Casey Rogers on Mr. Antoine Winfield Jr. Because I just thought it was absolutely perfect, sums up everything. But he said, well, and I actually kind of, I don't know which one you chose, but I actually kind of sandwiched. Like,
you sandwiched, all right,
yes,
sandwich it.
But he said, I've been blessed to be in this league for a few years, and I've been around a lot of good safeties, but he is going to be right there at the top. From my standpoint, this guy should be up for All-Pro. This guy should be in the conversation for defensive MVP, and he doesn't make the Pro Bowl. We don't get to decide that, but we know what he means to us. He does it week in and week out. You can't say he disappeared this game because he's a true soldier. My hat goes off to him. I honestly think it is a travesty, meaning that he didn't make, obviously, a starter in the Pro Bowl. He said, you can see how our opponents tack us. We come off the field, and Winfield is on the sideline saying, when I came down, they said to watch 31. Everybody that we play is watching for him and accounting for where he is, so why doesn't he make the Pro Bowl? If you're not a good player, if they don't care where you are, when number 31 comes down, they want to know where he's at so that they can say, we're going that way or we're sending the protection this way. We know we're lucky to have him, and we know what he is to us. And I just absolutely loved that because that is just a testament to his ability, the consistency that he has had this week. I mean, the career highs that he has set in literally every category, from sacks to forced fumbles to fumble recoveries. I think even tackles, just playing out of his mind. But also just from the standpoint that he pointed it out, from week in and week out, the way that teams are coming in and are immediately having to diagnose and know where Antoine is on every single play. And sending protections, or maybe not doing a screen to this way because they know that Antoine's coming down, or all of these things that they have to change because that he is in the backfield of the Buccaneers defense. Right. And that is the ultimate indicator of a player's ability, and Antoine has commanded that with his play.
I love that. Yep, I chose the same quote for the same reason. I thought that was just... Yeah, I felt like we had to all have our moment of complaining about him not getting in. And just what I also think is so amazing is having a guy like Antoine that is so good on the field. And then here he's also our Walter Payton nominee.
Yes.
He is...
stellar human being.
Just a wonderful person. Conducts himself so well on and off the field. It's hard for me to imagine there being a player out there you want on your team more than him. Because on and off the field, he just does everything right and so intentionally. So I think that we're just gonna say that he's in the Pro Bowl of our hearts, and we're just gonna move on from our anger. So all right, we're gonna close with our off the field human interest fact that I bring each week. So Cody Mauch, we're coming to the end of his rookie year. Thought we would discuss the evolution of Cody Mauch.
Okay.
So. If I said this stat to you, tell me how shocked you would be. Cody Mauch finished high school with over 1,000 receiving yards. Right? Your face is exactly what I expected it to be. I feel very happy that my fact had the intended reaction.
That would not have been what I would.
Oh, and then also a school record 24 touchdowns.
Oh, wow.
And school record in sacks in a season and career. How wonderful are those stats for a guy that is now an offensive lineman?
That is absolutely beautiful.
So he was not the Cody Mauch we picture right now when he was in high school. If people want, you can go Google sort of a before and after photo of Cody, even just to start college to the end of it.
It's like the old footage of Vita playing running back.
But Vita was big then.
That's
like
true.
That made sense. They used him as just this giant fullback. Cody was smaller. He was like not very big at all.
I cannot picture this.
So in high school, he had experience at tight end, defensive end, and quarterback. All in high school, played all of those things. He also played baseball, qualified for state as a thrower in track, all the things. So he started out in college much smaller and had to transition into being a big offensive lineman. So it just gives me a lot of credit for him of where he's at. If we talked about the transition from college to pro in terms of coming from just like a small school, to factor in that like he really had to put on the weight to become an offensive lineman in college and at a smaller school. I just have a lot of respect for the growth he's shown and where he's at this point and how well he's played and the progression we've seen over the course of the year. And I just wanted to give everyone a moment to picture Cody Mauch scoring all them touchdowns, getting receiving yards. It made me really happy to find all that out. And yes, the photo online, if you want to Google it, it's pretty incredible. I think they put it up in a graphic, maybe for like one of his college games. They showed a picture of him as a freshman and as a senior. It is unrecognizable, and I loved it. So, all right, that is going to do it for us on this edition of Tampa 2, and hopefully we are back here next week talking about that playoff game the Bucs will be in. So we'll see you then.